Yes, old Roblox. Back in the days when there was no Apocalypse Rising, and Builders Club wasn't heavily enforced upon the noobs. But, was it really better? Because it seems like more and more people every day are saying how better old Roblox is. But why? Was it the circle studs, the games, the community? Well, I wanted to argue that very topic, as you might expect. So, let's start right off with some pros and cons about old Roblox. Some general pros are it had, arguably, better admin to user communications. None of which I ever saw, but people always seem to insist that it was there. BC, as I've said before, wasn't so instigated onto a person. It was more like, hey, you want to support the game and want to have extra places and money? Buy BC. And, you know, not as it is today where it is now buy BC or GTFO. But hey, I'm not being biased, I am being realistic. Roblox does in fact need the money. And they didn't really back then. You know, having more of a player base and more servers to pay for now than they did in 2008, I can completely understand why they need more money to develop, keep up the servers, and pay their employees. In general, you didn't need nearly as much Robux or tickets to buy interesting things, but that does carry on to a point that I'll make later. And a final pro about old Roblox is that it was actually focused on building. It wasn't like today where it's now, hey, I've got to build a game to get money. Back then it was like, hey, I want to build a game because I want to build a game. And now onto the cons of old Roblox. Most games back in 2008 to 2010 were primarily focused on escape the zombies, escape the tsunami, escape blank. Or it was build to survive this, build to survive that, or in general just a building sandbox game, which, mind you, never saved your stats. Another con is, interestingly enough, hats were either extremely high priced or unobtainable. And by high priced, like I said, I would carry on this, you didn't need nearly as much money, which kind of contradicts itself now. By high priced, I mean like tens of thousands of tickets or 100+ tickets. That was kind of a lot, but wasn't at the same time. It was a lot back then, but not today, whereas now today you need 2 million Robux to buy a hat. Back then it was more like you need 100,000 ticks to buy a hat. Not even that, but most of the hats in general were just very, very poorly made, which, again, it was old Roblox. What do you expect? They didn't have a great blender or whatever, like a mesh creator, but still, it stands to say that the hats weren't as good, nearly, and hats are a giant thing of Roblox if you haven't noticed, if you've been living in a cave for the last 8 years. And because there were just kind of like welfare hats back then for 40 ticks, everybody looked the same because there weren't as many hats. In 2010, an event happened. The popular and lovely admin Bright Eyes called it the Hatsplosion, where roughly 1 to 2 hats were released daily, resulting in the Hatsplosion that you see today. We have roughly over 100 pages of hats, and that's not a bad thing. Back then you had like 12. That was a bad thing. Everybody looked the same. It was like China. And China is just, I'm not gonna go there, that's racism. One final con about old Roblox, to even it up, is that the UI was clunky. Many people bash the new HUD that we have today, but it's a lot better. And by a lot better, I mean a lot better. Back in the day, we had this nasty looking, generic, of a UI. I am looking at it right now to refresh my memory, and I can already feel the cancer going inside me because it was so bad. Koala0226 says, for me, old Roblox was better because there was more of an explorational mood. Back then, it was a lot easier to make games that are unique. These days, it's a lot harder to make a unique game because everything has mostly been done, and it gets boring seeing the same ideas over and over again. Well, Koala, in a sense, I do agree with you. It did have more of an explorational mood back then, but that's only because you were new to the game. You know, whenever you're new to something, you're gonna want to explore it, you're gonna want to look inside of it, you're gonna want to tear it apart piece by piece, kind of like a zombie is going to tear apart Carl from The Walking Dead in a few days. When you say it was a lot easier to make games that are unique back then, but these days it's a lot harder, I'm kind of confused there, because today it's a lot easier to make a new game that is unique. I mean, the scripting has come a long way. You can do so much more than you could back then. Apocalypse Rising being such a huge, oh my gosh. It is such a huge example of how you can create such an amazing game out of just a basic idea. Like, you could say it's not unique, but holy cow is it for Roblox. Back then, you had games like Underground Warfare being the front page game, or just Paintball by Mike's. Today, you see complex games like The Stalker or Robloxity and Sword Fighting Tournament. Like, all those games really just improved what old Roblox has, or had rather, with their advanced scripting and knowledge. Like, can you really say that old Roblox had more unique games? Sure, it was easier to make a game back then because you didn't really have to know anything, you could have just started building, but now today it's kind of like real life. You have to market yourself, you have to really put your effort into it. You can't just pass out a half-assed game and expect to get it to the front page. Oh, actually, I guess you can. It's called free models. Lord Rambo says, God, yes! While I may have been just a kid then, I still had much more fun. While the greedy people who have migrated here have destroyed Let's Make a Deal, which was once my home a long, long time ago, and nearly every aspect is being ruined now. You got the devs and the admins on the right side doing a poor job of moderation, adding horrible updates and otherwise making the site worse, and on the left side you have the community, which I don't think that you need me to tell you how bad it is. I agree with you, the community isn't getting better, but it's not really gotten worse from 2008, for my example. It's just gotten bigger, so it seems like there's more of those people, but there really are a tremendous amount of people who are great and just generally have amazing personalities and amazing talents, but as real life does, also, it focuses on the bad sides of the world, if you catch my drift. Because talking about fun things isn't fun. Talking about bad things and drama is fun, which is so odd. And I can definitely agree with you that the moderation is not by any means amazing. But it is amazing in another sense because we only have like 25 mods doing all of this work. Which again, comes back to the point where, of course, moderation would be better in old Roblox because there wasn't many users. You didn't need 1,000 bajillion mods for this cluster of people now. We have like, what, 25 million active players? Like, what? Can you really expect moderation to be tip-top with 25 million people? And lastly, of course it would be much more fun as a kid. I forget what the term is called, but oddly, your brain kind of depicts things from your past as golden and as so amazing, especially when you're a kid because you're new to the world, kind of like you're new to Roblox. I forget what the term is, but for some psychological reason, you're always going to see things in the past, especially as a kid, as so amazing. Lonely345543 says, I'm from April 2008, and I must say, the site theme and nostalgia is the only thing better. And I could not agree with you more. The site theme is just kind of ugly and bland, and maybe if it were green I would like it, but I'm not sure. Osiris says, he's from 2008, and no, it wasn't better. Roblox constantly gets better as time goes on. There have been a few controversial updates recently, but there's also been some fantastic updates, like those new dynamic lighting shadows, 60 frames per second physics, amazing! Roblox only continues to get better. Back in the old days, half the API didn't exist. The community hasn't changed, it's gotten bigger. As you age, you find yourself maturing and the masses aren't funny anymore. Give yourself a few years, then go to the last page of the Sent tab in your messages. It'll be hilariously embarrassing. Oh my god, I could Oh my god. It's like he reached into my brain, pulled out what I was thinking, and then posted it better than I could say it. I could not agree with you anymore. And I think I will end this video with X1337MageX saying nipples. That's it for today's discussion. Thank you guys for watching. As for the next discussion videos, leave a comment down below saying what you think I should talk about. Please like, favorite, or subscribe. And as always guys, have a good one.